Most people believe they have to speak to be heard, react to have power, or defend themselves to have value. But there's a small percentage of the world's population who've discovered something revolutionary. Silence can be the most powerful weapon you hold against those who despise you. And it's not just any silence. There are 4 specific types of silence that can make those who underestimate you lose total emotional control. Mastering these silences separates you from those begging for attention and places you in a position of real power where others start seeking you out. So stay with me until the end, because the last one is the most powerful of all. It can make even the most arrogant people completely rethink how they treat you. Miss this, and you might keep reacting emotionally every time someone provokes you, trapped in the same cycle of disrespect you've always lived through. First, you need to understand why silence has this devastating power over those who despise you. It's not about strategy or manipulation, it's emotional alchemy. Conscious silence is one of the oldest and most powerful forces in the human psyche. And when you learn to use it correctly, you literally shift the energetic field around you. Carl Jung explained that our psyche works through projections. When someone despises you, they're really projecting parts of their own shadow that they won't accept within themselves. They need to diminish you to feel bigger. They rely on your emotional reaction to confirm their power over you. But when you enter conscious silence, something deep happens. You stop fueling those projections. Without emotional fuel, the projection turns back on the one who cast it. That's why toxic people get desperate when they can no longer rile you up. They lose the psychic energy source they fed on to feel superior. Jung himself experienced this intensely. When he broke with Freud, it wasn't just an intellectual disagreement, but an ego clash where Freud tried every way to diminish Jung. Jung's response was not fiery words or public attacks, but deep, productive silence. He withdrew, developed his own theories, and let his work speak for itself. Years later, when Jung became one of the most influential minds of the 20th century, Freud was consumed by obsession to prove Jung wrong. That's the devastating power of conscious silence. It transfers the anxiety of the silenced onto the one who tried to diminish. The first type of silence that leaves those who despise you in despair is the silence of non-reaction. It's the most basic, yet also the most transformative for those who've always reacted impulsively. Imagine this. Someone makes a nasty comment about you, criticizes you publicly, or tries to humiliate you in front of others. The natural response would be to defend yourself, explain your position, fight back, or at least show that it affected you. But non-reaction silence is different. You listen, record it internally, but don't offer any emotional energy in return. You neither deny nor confirm. Don't justify yourself. You just remain present, look the person in the eye, and let their toxicity expose itself. This silence is devastating because it breaks the addictive cycle manipulative people use to feed emotionally. They count on your reaction. They need you to lose composure, to play their emotional game. When it doesn't happen, they get lost. It's as if they'd scripted a whole play, only to find the other actor refuses to perform. Jung called this the withdrawal of psychic libido. When you stop investing emotional energy in needless conflicts, you automatically force the other to face their toxicity without anywhere to project it. Practically, this silence sounds simple, but requires deep emotional maturity. Because our natural impulse when attacked is to defend ourselves. The ego wants to prove it's right, fix its image, win the argument. But those who master non-reaction silence understand a fundamental truth. You don't have to win every battle to win the war. Sometimes, you win the war by refusing to fight insignificant battles. When you don't react emotionally, your personal power stays intact. You don't waste vital energy on conflicts that don't elevate you. Most importantly, you force the other to see their own behavior without the smokescreen of argument. The result is always the same. The attacker is disturbed by your calm. They start questioning themselves internally, even if they don't admit it. They may even escalate attacks initially, trying to provoke a reaction. But when they realize you won't play their game, something inside changes. They lose interest in conflict because they've lost the emotional fuel they fed on. Often, days or weeks later, you notice this person starts treating you with more respect. Not because they changed their mind about you, but because they unconsciously respected your emotional self-control. The second type of silence that drives those who despise you to despair is the silence of strategic absence. This is more sophisticated than the first because it involves not only non-reaction, but physically and emotionally removing yourself from environments where you're not valued. It's the silence you practice when you stop going to places where your presence is constantly disrespected. Stop participating in conversations where you're systematically diminished. Stop being available to people who only come to you when they need something, but ignore you when you need support. This silence devastates manipulators because they depend on your presence to maintain their status quo of disrespect. They count on you continuing to show up, to be available as a target for attacks, sarcasm, and destructive criticism. When you remove yourself from those spaces, they lose the object of projection and are forced to face their own inner emptiness. Jung explained many people build their identity in opposition to others. They only feel important when they can put someone down. When you remove your presence, it's like an important mirror is taken away from their lives. Strategic absence isn't an emotional game or an attention-seeking tactic. It's a mature decision to preserve your vital energy and mental health. It's recognizing you deserve spaces where your presence is celebrated, not just tolerated. It's acknowledging you don't have to be anyone's emotional punching bag, regardless of family ties or shared history. This silence energetically says, my time and energy are too valuable to be wasted on those who don't recognize my worth. In practice, this might mean no longer attending toxic family gatherings, distancing yourself from friend groups that constantly diminish you, avoiding workplaces where your work is undervalued without real cause. It's an active silence, a conscious choice about where to invest your presence. The effect is always powerful because those who needed to diminish you now must seek other sources of validation or face their own toxicity. You'll notice some of these people will start seeking you out, not necessarily to apologize, but because they miss the dynamic they had with you. They may blame you for the distance, say you're overreacting or being dramatic, but that's just another attempt to pull you back into the place where they had emotional control over you. The key is to maintain the absence until there are real behavioral changes, not empty promises or temporary manipulations. The third type of silence that leaves those who despise you in despair is the silence of emotional indifference. This is the most challenging because it demands you reach an internal state where the opinion of those who disrespect you genuinely stops mattering to you. It's not pretending indifference or forcing a superior attitude. It's a real state where you've emotionally disconnected from the need for approval or recognition from that particular person. You truly don't care anymore if they criticize, praise, talk about you, or completely ignore you. This silence is devastating because it hits the ego of the one who despises you at its most sensitive point, irrelevance. Most toxic people prefer to be hated than ignored. They can handle conflict, argument, even distance, because all of that still represents some level of emotional importance in your life. But when you achieve genuine indifference, it's like that person disappears from your emotional radar. And that's psychologically unbearable for the one who depended on your reaction to validate their own importance. Jung studied this deeply in his analysis of persecutor-victim dynamics. Many toxic relationships persist not out of love or hate, but because of the emotional intensity each generates in the other. The persecutor needs the victim's intense reaction to feel powerful, and the victim sometimes maintains the connection because it feels important enough to evoke strong emotions. When you reach real emotional indifference, you completely break this cycle because you remove all the intensity from the dynamic. In practice, this silence is the hardest to fake because it requires a genuine inner transformation. You can't just decide to be indifferent and be done with it. It usually happens after you've worked on your self-esteem, developed other sources of validation and recognition, and especially when you understand that a toxic person's opinion has no real power over your life unless you give it that power. It's the silence born when you truly find yourself and no longer need external approval to feel whole. When you reach this state, the effect on the person who despised you is immediate and profound. They realize they've lost all power to affect you. They may try to escalate attacks, find more creative ways to get your attention, or even change tactics completely to approach more respectfully. But you remain emotionally detached from all these attempts because they simply no longer resonate with who you have become inside. This is one of the most liberating silences there is, because it fully returns power over your own emotional life to you. You stop being a hostage to mood swings, approvals or disapprovals, the psychological games of those around you. It's like walking out of a noisy room into a silent library, where you can finally hear your own thoughts without outside interference. Now, We arrive at the fourth and most powerful type of silence that leaves those who despise you in utter despair. The silence of evident mastery. This isn't just about not reacting, being absent, or indifferent. It's about silently transforming into such an elevated version of yourself that your very existence becomes a devastating response to all who doubted you. It's when you stop trying to prove your worth through words and begin showing it through accomplishments, personal growth, success, and especially through an inner peace so solid it can't be ignored. This silence is the most powerful because it's truly alchemical. You literally transmute all the negative energy directed at you into fuel for your own evolution. Instead of wasting time convincing those who despised you of your value, you invest that time developing yourself, studying, growing, creating, building a life that speaks for itself. It's the silence of someone who understood that the best revenge is not to harm those who hurt you, but to become so extraordinary that mere comparison embarrasses those who underestimated you. Jung lived this intensely after his break with Freud. Instead of wasting energy trying to publicly prove Freud wrong, he immersed himself in developing his own theories. He explored psyche territories Freud never dared to investigate. He developed revolutionary ideas like the collective unconscious, archetypes, and the process of individuation. While Freud consumed himself trying to keep his school of thought as the only valid one, Jung quietly built a legacy that eventually proved much deeper and more enduring. In your life, this silence may manifest in many ways. Maybe you're finally pursuing that career you always wanted, but that others said was impossible for someone like you. Maybe you're developing skills, talents, or knowledge that put you on a completely different level from where people once saw you. Maybe you're caring for your physical and mental health so diligently that your energy and vitality are obvious to anyone who meets you. Maybe you're building healthy, deep relationships that stand in stark contrast to the toxicity you once accepted. The most fascinating thing about this silence is that it needs no announcements or fanfare. When you genuinely evolve, it becomes visible in your posture, your speech, your choices, the quality of the people around you, your projects, and the peace you radiate. It's a silence that screams through your transformed existence. And for those who despised you, it's psychologically devastating because it forces an inevitable comparison between where they are and where you've arrived. People who underestimated you start questioning themselves internally. Not always openly admitting it, but there's a restlessness that arises when they realize you didn't just survive their attacks, you used the experience as a springboard for something greater. They may try to minimize your achievements, poke holes in your new reality, or even try to reach out to regain some relevance in your life. But none of it touches you because you're operating on a completely different frequency. It's important to understand that this silence does not arise from a need to prove anything to anyone. It comes from your own commitment not to waste the life you have. When you stop wasting mental energy on those who disrespected you and channel that energy into your growth, a natural alchemy happens. You become magnetic for opportunities, people, and experiences aligned with your new vibration, and automatically, you repel all the toxicity you used to accept as normal. This is the silence most feared by manipulators and narcissists, because they lose total control over the narrative. They can no longer say you're weak, incapable, or doomed to fail when your life contradicts those claims. They can no longer use you as an example of inferiority when you clearly evolved beyond the place where they kept you mentally. It's as if you stepped off the stage where you played the victim and entered real life as the protagonist of your own story. But mastering these four silences requires something many people aren't willing to develop: strategic patience and emotional self-discipline. Because the natural instinct when faced with disrespect is immediate reaction. We want to defend ourselves on the spot, prove our point immediately, show we aren't what the other person says we are. But real power lies in choosing when and how to respond, or if it's worth responding at all. Often the most powerful answer is the silence that lets your evolution speak for you. Jung understood that individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, almost always involves moments of solitude and misunderstanding. There are phases when you must withdraw from the external noise to hear your own inner voice. There are moments when you must resist the temptation to explain or justify yourself because you're too busy building yourself to waste time convincing others. And there are periods where your only responsibility is to yourself, developing your own excellence regardless of others' opinions. When you integrate these four silences in your life, a transformation happens that goes far beyond dealing with toxic people. You develop an inner authority reflected in how the world treats you. People start approaching you with more respect automatically, because you radiate an energy that won't accept disrespect. You attract more mature and healthy relationships because your own emotional maturity acts as a natural filter. And most importantly, you build inner peace that doesn't depend on anyone's approval or behavior. That doesn't mean you become cold or insensitive. It means you become selective with your emotional energy. You remain capable of deep love, meaningful connections, and genuine compassion. But now you direct those qualities toward people and situations that deserve and value what you offer. You stop wasting your essence on those who can't recognize your worth. It's fascinating to observe how people who once treated you badly begin changing their behavior when you embody these silences. Some try to reconnect with you more respectfully. Others simply drift away because they realize they lost emotional control over you. And some remain consumed by the toxicity they once projected onto you. But in every case, you're in a position of strength because your well-being no longer depends on their choices. What amazes most people who master these silences is realizing that many conflicts they lived through were never really about them. They were about the insecurities, frustrations, and unresolved shadows of those who attacked. When you stop feeding those projections through your reactions, you force each person to deal with their own inner demons. And that is simultaneously liberating for you, and uncomfortable for those who depended on using you as an emotional outlet. Carl Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. But he also understood that it's not always our responsibility to be the emotional laboratory of other people. Sometimes our responsibility is to preserve our own sanity and develop despite the attacks we receive. Conscious silence is one of the most powerful tools for this because it allows you to grow without wasting energy on battles that don't elevate you. When you truly master these 4 silences, you realize you've gained something far more valuable than revenge or recognition from those who despised you. You've gained emotional freedom, the freedom to be yourself without needing anyone's approval, the freedom to invest your energy only in what really matters, the freedom to build a life based on your own values and dreams, not on the expectations or limitations others tried to impose. And maybe the most powerful thing of all is realizing that when you no longer need to prove anything to anyone, you become genuinely capable of contributing to the world. All the energy you used to waste trying to defend or impress toxic people can now be channeled into creating, helping, inspiring, and making a real difference in the lives of those who deserve your attention and care. If you've stayed with me to this point in the video, you've already shown something that separates you from most people: patience and willingness to absorb deep knowledge rather than seek superficial solutions. That's a sign you have the potential to master these silences and completely transform the way the world treats you. Remember, you didn't get here by accident. Your soul knows you're ready to claim your personal power and stop accepting the disrespect you may have normalized in the past. But if you want to go further and truly master and practice everything about Carl Jung and the secrets of personal transformation, I have something special for you. I created 2 exclusive materials that will revolutionize your journey of self-awareness: the Soul Survival Manual with the teachings of Carl Jung and 21 Days of Transformation with Carl Jung. These are full, deep, and practical ebooks that will guide you step by step through Jung's most powerful techniques to master these 4 types of silence and become someone who naturally inspires respect and admiration effortlessly. In these materials, you'll find practical Jungian exercises to develop a magnetic presence that disarms even the most arrogant people, how to use conscious silence to turn around any power dynamic where you're being diminished, and much more. The link is pinned here in the comments. Click there and definitively transform how the world sees and treats you. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 4 silences resonates most with what you need to develop in your life right now? Write in the comments, "I master my silence." Because when you publicly declare your intention to change, you activate a powerful psychological force that helps you keep your commitment to yourself. If this content truly touched something deep inside you, give the video a like because it helps the algorithm bring this message to more people who also need to discover the transformative power of conscious silence. Remember, your silent evolution is the most devastating response you can give to those who tried to diminish you. Thank you for being here with me on this journey of personal awakening. See you in the next video.